And I'll start my music. Favorite. So good it's Friday. Happy Friday, everybody. Hopefully it's working. I think it's working. Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to MadGaines. Thank God it's Friday. It has been a long week. Okay, so everybody knows we are on Zoom, but we encourage everybody to go on over to YouTube and to LinkedIn. Even if you're on Facebook, go over to YouTube and LinkedIn. That's where your questions are going to be pulled from. We'll keep an eye on your comments. But we have a very special show for you guys today. So oddly enough, I have gotten a lot of questions about cargo claims. I don't know what's going on over the last 2 weeks, but there seems to be an increase in cargo claim issues. And a lot of them are coming from my shippers. So today we are going to nerd it out for the first half an hour on cargo claims. And then we're going to do open mic so anyone can come on, talk about cargo claims, talk about whatever you want. No logos, no selling your company, no talking about your company. Y'all know the rules. And just remember, right? The point of having this show, MadGaines, is I'm doing this as as a hobby. It's for you guys to come on, make friends, show the community that you know your stuff, educate us, and learn from others. That's the point of this goal. So there are going to be some rules. You'll see them in the emails I sent out and on the posts. But just as a reminder, no logos, no talking about your companies. We drink beer, we curse, but let's keep it somewhat professional, please. So starting here, we have today a cargo claims ninja. He's a ninja. He doesn't want to be a ninja, but you're a ninja, Chris. Chris Olson, welcome. You have been my best cargo claims friend for a long time now, right? Like,
It's getting up there, yeah.
we're getting old. We started out at Echo together, and then Chris, where'd you go after Echo?
Sure. After Echo, when you come into transportation on the brokerage side, I feel like you need to at some point get asset experience. So
True.
after coming into things at Echo, I realized I had been dealing with transportation services for a long time, in some cases selling transportation services, but I had never been on a dock before, really.
Mm-hmm.
So I went out to get that asset-based experience and ended up working for an asset-based carrier for 4 years. And then when Uber bought Auto, I became very interested in seeing what they were doing over there, and eventually weaseled my way in, and here I am now.
Nice. And you have been, let's see, you've been in cargo claims for a very long time, right? So for asset and brokerage.
Just over a decade dealing with cargo problems in transit of all kinds.
And Chris and I have kept in touch for a long time because the cargo claim community is very small. I was raised as a baby lawyer on cargo claims law. That's what I learned first. Oddly enough, it is an incredibly intense area of the law that normal lawyers do not know, period. They do not know it. In fact, many claims adjusters will know the federal law, the cargo law, way better than any lawyer would. So Chris and I joke. Chris, what do you always say? There's like three types of people in the cargo claims world.
Yeah, if you set out to handle cargo claims for a living, you'll encounter three different cargo claim professionals. The first is the person who's been doing this a long time. And not to besmirch anyone, but typically this kind of actor, their voice kind of sounds like they smoke 3 packs a day and only drink milk, right?
It's so
So
true.
I've been doing this a long time, all right, you know. The problem with this type of actor is a lot of the template letters they send out reference like the Interstate Commerce Commission. They've got knowledge at some point in a non-academic way, and they've kind of been copying and pasting for 3 decades.
Yes.
You can see where that might be frustrating. The second type of person that you'll meet who handles cargo claims understands the rules of filing and collection, the statute, the regulation, the way contracts and policies work, And you might not agree with this second type of claims handler all the time, but you can at least disagree in a productive way, right? Then you have the third type of person who handles cargo claims. This, I think, is the most regrettable type of person that you'll meet in this line of work.
It's so true.
And this is the person who, you know what, maybe they do have some academic background and maybe they do understand things a little bit, but they don't understand things as well as they think they do. And conversations are incredibly unproductive and awkward. And you
Yes.
might find yourself deep 5 days into some debate about standard bill of lading terms and conditions. And you're like, look, this is day 5 of me telling you this didn't move on a standard bill. So, like, can we please get past this?
They
So those
are
are the
the toughest,
three.
and you can't get past because they won't let it go. You can't get
Right.
past. So, Chris and I, that's why Chris and I talk so much, is because those in the cargo claims community, it's very, very, very small. We all know who each other are, and we pick up the phone and we talk to each other all the time. Um, and so we have joining us on YouTube, we have Ron Kane, we have Amanda Miller, who you can feed your questions to. Amanda's got my back. We got Ingrid Brown in the house. We have Ignacio. Hi, Ignacio. We have the freight coach, Chris Jolly, who's helping me moderate the comments, and Eric Serta. So I'm excited to have everybody. We got TJ in the house. He already says, holy stash. I'm already intrigued. That's what TJ said. We got Justin who says open mic night. Oh yeah, for those of you, we're going to talk about 30 minutes. We're going to talk about cargo claims. After that is open mic night. What you need to do is Amanda Miller will have the link. Come over to Zoom if you want to participate. You can watch on YouTube. You can watch on LinkedIn. But if you want to participate, come over to Zoom and then you've got a little virtual hand. Whenever you're ready, just raise that and I'll do my best to keep an eye on it. And you can come on, you can talk about whatever you want to talk about. So Chris, I know you were very busy today. But I posed a question to everybody on LinkedIn, and I chuckle at this question because it's a common misconception. And what the question was it true or false? A broker, if the broker hires a carrier, the broker is liable for cargo damage under the law. And what I wanted to get here, because this confused people, and Chris, you probably have heard this where shippers will be like, you'll represent a broker and you'll be processing a cargo claim for the broker. And shippers will be like, Chris, I thought you were the carrier. And you know they didn't think you were the carrier. Or maybe they did, because you're salespeople. This happens all over the place. Kind of made it seem like you were the carrier. So you're in a situation where the shipper's either, broker, you got to pay for this cargo damage, or I thought you were the carrier, or you signed a contract. So there's many variables with this question, but I'll tell you the black and white answer, you guys. Nothing in cargo claims is black and white, but this one is. So if you're a broker, you are not automatically liable for cargo claims under the law. Under the law, your job is to arrange for transportation. That's it. The carrier is liable. Listen, there are exceptions. If you hold yourself out as a carrier, if you make promises like, I'll pick the best carrier you've ever seen, I'll make sure I have insurance if the carrier has insurance in writing, you sign a contract, or you fail to even notify the shipper that you're simply a broker. Those types of things will be exceptions to the general law. So for those of you joining us, we're talking about cargo claims, and we're going to talk about it for 30 minutes, and then we're going to have open mic night over here. You can come over to Zoom. You can raise your virtual hand. I can see people flowing in. But the answer to the LinkedIn question was no. A broker is not automatically liable just because they hire the carrier. A broker under the law is just responsible for arranging for transportation. And the exceptions are if you hold yourself out as a carrier, if you make big promises, or if you sign a contract. And I think there's some other ones too, but those are the main ones that you guys need to know. Christopher, the reason why I thought about bringing you onto the show is because I want to ask you, what is the best thing, or what are your tips and tricks when a broker or a shipper or a carrier has received a cargo claim? Actually, it would be the carrier or the broker has received a cargo claim. What are you advising in all your free time at dinner parties? What are you advising everybody on what to do?
I think the first part of that is a problem. I do advise people at dinner parties on how to handle cargo claims.
I do too.
Yeah.
And I tell them about trucking accidents, and I ruin the whole evening.
All my friends out there are just like, he does, it's a problem, you know. But at any rate, I think no matter who you are, right? If you are if you're handling claims from a broker's perspective, from a motor carrier's perspective, and even in some cases, you know, from the claimant's perspective, be it the shipper or the consignee, the first rule is to do something, right? Because in my experience, inaction and delay upset people more than declination, or at least they can in some cases. So the first rule of thumb is don't do nothing, right?
Because people
Acknowledge the
do that, right?
claim.
They get anxiety, especially
Yes.
salespeople, and they'll be like, "Oh, the consignee said that there's something wrong with the claim, with the cargo,"
Well, you know
and then
what?
nobody kind of sits on it and hopes it goes
I
away.
Yeah, I want to perhaps on that note take even a step back. And in my introduction, whenever I talk about claims, usually the first thing that I tell people is like, "Hi, I'm Chris Olson. I handle cargo claims for a living, and I'm okay." All right, you know. And the reason why I have to let people know I'm all right is sometimes when I tell people what I do, they think I'm being punished for something, or you know what I mean, like this is some bad thing. So I like to establish first off that, you know, I like what I'm doing. I find this career rewarding. I had to work very hard to get where I am.
Yeah, it's a hard job.
So don't approach claims people like they're being punished. And I think the reason why we all kind of like, oh man, I feel so bad for claims professionals, is because we're all really afraid of cargo claims,
Yes.
right? And this ties back to your point. A lot of the time, people are just like, oh, that looks bad. I'm going to hide it. I don't want to see it, you know?
Maybe my shipper won't say anything.
Yeah, right. Maybe this will just go away. It won't go away. So claims age very, very, very poorly. And I have found no matter what side of the matter I'm working on at a given time, no matter who I'm representing, I always, always, always prefer a speedy professional response to a protracted kind of meandering conversation, right? So the first thing you do when you get a cargo claim is be prompt, acknowledge it right away. Hey, I got the claim, right? The second thing I would advise you to do is like before the claims even happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Have a plan for cargo claims. And I am fond of saying that the first casualty of any war is the plan, right? You're going to have a plan and you're going to march confidently with your plan into the transportation environment, and things are going to happen and your plan is going to go out the window right away. But this doesn't mean that you shouldn't have a plan, and it doesn't mean that you should despair, right? Uh, in situations like this, things can get chaotic very quickly, and you might be presented with situations that you don't know how to deal with, right? Someone may call you at 7 o'clock on a Friday night and say, "Hey, there's 40,000 pounds of peanut butter that's spilling from a 53-foot trailer with your company's name on the side of it. It's blocking this highway, and I understand you're the person who deals with these things." Take a moment, as I do from time to time, and say to yourself, "I can't believe this is anyone's job. This is insane. I can't believe it's my job," right? Then exhale and pick up your plan, right? Because even if you have no idea how to deal with 30,000 pounds of peanut butter on the interstate, you can pick up your plan and do step one,
Mm-hmm.
and you can do step two. And that's the way that I would encourage people to wade into things like this.
For some of my super new people, carriers or brokers or even shippers, if you designate someone that's very administrative, they're very astute, they like to read a lot, designate them as your cargo claim person, and tell the salespeople to let that person know whenever a shipment comes in short. It's whenever a shipment is coming in damaged and the consignee's noticed. Don't even get it out of your salespeople's hands entirely and send it to somebody who likes all that books and reading and craftiness. You know what type of personality I'm talking about. And for that person who it's getting dumped on, and you have no idea what to do, go to my YouTube page because there are a lot of videos for you. And then Google cargo claims forms. And you'll see a ton of them online. And you can create your own. You can cut and paste from the ones you like. You can create your own so that you look professional when you send a cargo claim form to your shipper. Because, right, Chris, it looks good when someone says, hey, Chris, they're in sales, they work for a broker, and they turn to you and they say, hey, Chris, a shipment just showed up short. We are missing 4 TVs off the shipment. And then Chris already has the forms ready to go. He sends to the shipper and says, hey, shipper, when you're ready, we've been notified that the shipment arrived short. When you're ready, here's your form and here's all your information and your instructions. Dude, you look pro. You look real good. And you look better than competitors.
And you want to, right when something goes wrong, if you're the carrier or the broker, you're probably dealing with a shipper who is a little dismayed at the fact that something has gone wrong with thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of their things. So the mind your bedside manner, right? Everything you do should lend confidence to the situation. And even if you can imagine being told that you have a severe medical condition in 2 different kinds of ways, right? Yeah, I don't know, you have cancer. What? Versus, hey, this is exactly what the problem is. This is what we're going to do next about it. Here's what I need you to focus on right now. Which feels better, right? The latter. And to your earlier point, Cassandra, I would say establish a culture within your company, whatever entity you are in transportation, that I always try to establish ground rules and culture that if a claim or an accident or anything related to transportation risk liability comes in, yes, you get that stuff right to the claims people. And you almost don't want, it can create exposure if anyone just random in the organization starts talking about it. So if you're a motor carrier and your dispatcher is chatty, right, as helps them be successful in that profession, what if your dispatcher is too chatty with the wrong entity following a serious incident, right? I think it's perfectly sensible to establish a ground rule that no one talks about this stuff except for a carefully manicured group of people that know exactly how to address a wide range of situations that are problemy.
Another thing I want to piggyback on, Chris, is that because people are so terrified of cargo claims sometimes, they miss the opportunity to A, look good with their customer, and B, really build a case. Because you can, as a shipper or a consignee or a broker or a carrier, immediately when you hear there's damaged goods, especially if it's concealed or anything like that, the very, 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 very best thing you guys can do is to get pictures, lots and lots of pictures and lots of data, as much as you guys can gather it all as fast as you can, because the more someone has when they're processing the claim, the quicker you can move with those claims. And shippers hate how slow those claims move, don't they, Chris? They get really annoyed. And we try to tell shippers, hey, it's a minimum of 180 days, a minimum from the day we receive the claim. And they get
120.
Really 100. Oh, I'm sorry?
120.
Oh, you say 120? See, I tell them 180. I'm like 120.
180 is a billing dispute.
Huh?
180 is a billing dispute.
What I'm telling is like the average. I'm trying to set expectations. I'm not telling them the law. I'm giving us some extra time, by the way. But I try to tell them that it's minimum of 180 days because I want them to know this is in for the long haul. How do you speed it up? You get me more information, more documents.
I often have this fantasy, right? And it's that a trailer is coming in, it's being delivered, right? The doors are opened, and as the trailer is coming in, everything is clearly.
What kind of fantasy is
this? No, it's a family show. So the freight family show. As the trailer's coming in, all the cargo is clearly visibly damaged, right? I always wish that like a little version of me could be sitting on the shoulder of that receiving manager and just like, all right, here's what we're going to do. You know what I mean? Take pictures of that freight before you even touch it. right?
Yes.
Here's exactly what you're going to write on the POD, and here's exactly who you're going to call right now. In designing your strategy, try to get as close to that fantasy as possible
Yep.
and set up processes. So, look, you can't magically perch on the shoulder of every receiver that you're going to handle claims for, but you can set up systems so that you get that information to that person as quickly as possible. What's the next best thing to being teleported onto their shoulder? Try to find that.
Yeah, that's nice. All right, so that's not the way I thought that fantasy was going to work out, but that's a pretty good fantasy. For those of you who are just joining us, you are talking to my cargo claims ninja. We're trying to teach everybody tips and tricks you wouldn't normally learn unless it's the hard way. And I want you guys to know that we're mainly on YouTube and LinkedIn. And look for Amanda Miller. She'll be on there. If you guys have questions, she'll feed them into us. So, Chris, I have a couple questions for you, my friend.
Yeah.
Chandler, I'm not going to answer your questions, Chandler. You are awfully salty today. He's trying to pick on me. So Sharon is one of our favorite people. And she says, which happens a lot, carrier triple broker to load without our knowledge. Which happens more because rates are higher. Yes. First carrier had an accident. Second carrier broke the seal and transloaded the freight. Oh, God. Freight was refused by the consignee due to damage. Okay. Okay, let's say you get that shit show. What would you do, Chris? Unless you wanted to ping it over to me, because that is a shit show.
No, I mean, so you have a lot going on there, right? And you have some now problems, and you have some, I got to work this part of it out later problems, right? In taking that situation apart, the now problem you have is that cargo is sitting with a motor carrier. And you really never want cargo to be sitting with a motor carrier unless it's in transit under a bill of lading contract, right? So the second that cargo is refused, the motor carrier's liability switches to that of a warehouseman, which is a lesser standard. So you're not going to have the same protection that you have under CARMAC. It's a much less strict standard of liability. Moreover, if you're thinking from a shipper or broker's perspective, that product might be branded product, right? And if you're the shipper, you don't want that hitting a seconds market, especially if it's damaged in some way or not up to par. So order of operations in my mind is first, secure that cargo, right? And, dealing with cargo claims, there's always this pull between what ought to happen and what is happening. I'm going to advise in a situation like this, and you have every right to be super upset at that chain of carriers for disrespecting your transit, but put that on a shelf and you can be mad about it later. First things first, negotiate with the carrier that's got your freight to get it delivered somewhere, right? Take care of that immediate problem, and then you can work on everything else. And when I say work on everything else, I mean, after something like that happens, you probably need to go back through your carrier selection process or your security process for a given shipment and reassess where things broke down. Because double brokering is, unfortunately, rampant, right? Everyone who's been in transportation for any respectable amount of time has dealt with a lot of it. And the biggest blow that these issues deal you in terms of cargo claims is now there's no insurance coverage. The bill of lading contract was with carrier 1. Then they passed it to carrier 2. Right away now, that insurance from carrier 1, who you have a carrier agreement with, right, whether you're a shipper or broker, all that's invalid. Now it's with someone you don't have an agreement with, and you don't have the protection of the insurance that you thought you had on file, right? So the last problem you're probably going to have to deal with is the cargo claim.
But what you can do, Sharon, is I want you to submit the claim with all 3 carriers. Anyone who touched it, you're going to submit a claim, but not with them. I want you to submit it with their insurance companies, and I want you to continuously say, under the law, you're equally liable. You touch my cargo, you're equally liable. You touched it, you're equally liable. And don't give up on that either. And you'll see that unless you have a really crappy insurance adjuster who doesn't really know the law and pretends they know the law, which Chris and I have run into many times, you will have success because the insurance companies will hopefully unite and figure out that they are all equally liable. And check your contract with your shipper, by the way, because once that seal's broken, often shippers want you to pay. But that's not how it works unless the contract says if the seal's broken. That's how it works. So make sure to check your contract. Chris, I love your point about making sure that you check your carrier vetting process because there are tricks, people. And on YouTube, I have a really good show. Actually, I have a bunch of, scan through my videos, you guys. Some of them are older, but scan through them because I have a lot of carrier vetting videos. But there are ways to vet a carrier to avoid double brokering. One thing is just looking at their mileage as reported and running associated VIN numbers too. So you guys, there are definitely ways, and that's why you don't solely use an electronic resource, is because there are ways to ensure the carrier doesn't double broker your shipment. But at the end of the day, sometimes it happens. I'm going to give you another question. Okay. How about this one? This is from a shipper. What is the best cover your ass for something that is potentially lost in transit? You're going to like this, Chris. But
I already do.
Is saying that they are looking for the product, but they can't make any progress.
Oh gosh, I hope it's an LTL shipment first off, because if you have product missing from a full truckload shipment, allow me to suggest you have more problems than just that cargo, right? And that the carrier should probably answer a number of other questions like, why was the trailer ever open, right? Did my cargo escape at night, you know?
But parked in the yard, and I came and the door was open, and I can't find it, but don't you worry, I'll find it.
Yeah, I think there are two things on this topic. The first thing, if you're talking like CYA type measures, right, you want to pay particular attention to the bill of lading, both how you make it out and how the driver signs for it. Because if you're dealing with shortage, that's going to be basically the keystone document of the entire claim process, right? And you would be surprised how careless people are with bills of lading. Or, you know what, I apologize, I forgot where I am. None of this audience is surprised, right? I've been duplicating the same bill since 1973, you know?
Google.
So I would encourage you, first, is just kind of a side project. Do me this favor, read your standard bill of lading, front and back from top to bottom. And anything you don't understand, either get counsel to see what this means and should I still have this on here? And if it doesn't make sense, get rid of it. You don't want a bill of lading that has tons of extraneous stuff that doesn't apply, right? Especially if it's your bill, you're making it up. It can say whatever you want. Take advantage of that. Next, when you're making out a bill of lading, lots of bill of ladings are real lazy. And I understand lazy bill of ladings because, don't tell anyone, I used to create bill of ladings early in my career, right? And if you're making a ton of bills every day, that's not an enthralling job, you know? And it can be hard to maintain focus and attention. But consider this. You've got a bill of lading and it says 10 pallets of general merchandise. And then you try to file a shortage claim for one case of this particular thing. Mm-hmm. Think of all the problems you have there, right? Number one, you're not filing for a pallet shortage, you're filing for a case count shortage, but you never listed the cases on the bill. And you never said what exactly was in those pallets. It was just general merchandise. Mm-hmm. So the shipper's gonna run into a problem of proving that that stuff was ever even loaded in the first place, which can seem insane from the shipper's perspective because they physically put the cargo on the truck, but it's not insane from my perspective. I'm a guy who's looking at just the paperwork 5 months later. I have no idea what you put on this truck, right? The second thing you really need to pay attention to is how the driver is signing for your freight. So, and I dealt with this from both sides, working with shippers. And also, there was a time when I was an even younger man than I am today, and I had to march out and talk to drivers before they went and made their pickups. And I was like, hi guys, if you can't count the cases, make sure you're signing SLC, okay? And I think they were all just kind of like, who is this elf talking to me about signing for freight? You know, it's early in the morning. Get out of here, guy. But how the driver signs for freight can really impact recoverability of the claim, especially if you're talking about shortage. Is the driver signing just his name on there? That means that he's agreeing that the pieces are exactly as you listed them.
Mm-hmm.
That's good for you. Is the driver using limiting language? Shipper loaded and counted, said to contain. These usually three-letter acronyms, SLC and STC, mean that what the driver is saying is, yeah, the shipper says all this stuff's on the bill, but I have no way to count it. I wasn't allowed on the dock. These are pre-loaded, pre-wrapped skids in primary, secondary, tertiary packaging. I don't know. I can't tell. So returning to me 5 months later on the back end, if the driver says shipper loaded and counted, and there's 7,000 units, 7,000 cases on the trailer, how can you hold the carrier liable for shortage in that case?
And what I like to do for that shipper is I like to tell the carrier, you have until this deadline. I pick a random deadline. Like, you have 3 days to find my product. If you haven't found my product in 3 days, then I'm reporting it stolen to your insurance company. And I'm moving on. That's how I like to go about it, because then they're like, oh shit, I better find this, because if you're all lackadaisical about it, then they're going to not think it's all that important. And also, if the shipment hasn't been delivered, I am taking the position that it's stolen, and I'm going to file it against the carrier's insurer. And notice I say carrier's insurer. If it's truckload, and if it's final mile too, because that's a pretty full truckload. So I have another question from another shipper. This is a good one. This one's going to get me fired up, so hold on. Oh. Okay. Out of curiosity, carriers, he says, what if I paid my invoices in a minimum of 180 days? Why should I wait for you to pay a claim that long? That's a good point.
Oh.
Okay, first, shipper, most of y'all do pay us 180 days. So I just want you to know that. But if you are paying your invoice within 30 days, it's a good question to figure out why your claim takes 180 days.
This exact question has been posed to me in the past, and I would put it this way, right? So an invoice and a cargo claim are just fundamentally different things, right? So like, hey, I eat apples all day long. Why can't I eat an orange the same way? Because they're different, man. But specifically, the way that they're different is an invoice is, a bill for services rendered. You've agreed on the services and the price on the front end, right? If you disagree with the bill, if it doesn't match the quote, there are mechanisms to deal with this in statute, regulation, and probably in your contract, right? A cargo claim is an investigation, right? It's not starting from a place of, hey, this service was rendered, we all knew it was going to be, and this is the price, we all knew what it was going to be. A claim is, I think I'm entitled to money because of a breach of the bill of lading contract. And then someone has to sit down and say, all right, let's find out if you are or not. So the reason, I guess, to put it succinctly, is because we have to think and investigate, think about and investigate cargo claims, whereas an invoice, like, yeah, you should just have mechanisms to pay those in whatever fashion you agreed to.
Yep, makes sense, 100%. And you know what? The one thing that I would say is that, hey, shipper, if you are really interested in speeding up the amount of days that it takes for a cargo claim to be paid, 1, put it in your contract. And then 2, you've got to pick more, you've got to pick the carriers and the brokers who have liquidity. Because insurance companies are the ones who take a very long time. So if you want a payment quicker, that means you've got to have a broker or carrier who can front the money, and then they on the back end deal with the insurance adjuster. It's
I did one soft point to that. Another thing a shipper can do is to file cargo claims well with all the required information up front. Sometimes, I think everyone has dealt with a situation where someone throws a very half-baked cargo claim on your desk. And for me, in that situation, it's like, look, my whole job right, is to solve this problem for you. So even though I know you're looking at me as an adversary, look, I'm your biggest ally here, right? I'm the one who's incented to solve this problem for you, and you're not giving me the tools that I need to do it. And now you're getting cranky because it's taking longer because you haven't given me the tools to solve this problem for you. Sometimes that can get a bit cringy. So if you want cargo claims filed fast, make sure you're putting them in right.
And I'm going to say, you're professional, Chris. You're always very professional. I'm the one who's not so much. And I'm going to say that there are many shippers out there who are really, really good to their partners. There are tons of shippers out there who are not so good with cargo claims. And they like to send us a little email 5 months later and say, hey, the shipment was short. You owe me $5,000. I think the shipment number is this, but that's all I got for you. Don't remember where the product was left. Don't remember how it was short. But anyhow, you gotta pay. Or how about this one? Hey, your entire shipment of water bottles have showed up late. And so we're just going to deny the whole entire thing. And we didn't take any pictures. I don't even know what happened to the water bottles, but I think you should pay for all of them. Good talking to you. Okay, I'm done. So 2 sides of the coin, people. 2 sides of the coin. I promised everybody I would open up the floor. We have a lot of questions. Okay, here's one, though, I want to answer. Because for those of you, Amanda Miller has been feeding us questions, God bless her, and helping us out. Kyle, one of our favorite people at Madtropolis, has a question that I'm intentionally plucking out because I know that it's going to make you laugh, Chris. Why are insurance agents, why did they take forever on processing cargo claims?
Oh my gosh. You know what? If I really knew, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you'd be the master.
No, so gosh, I can give you some insight into this answer, right? And part of the problem is this. So let's say you go out and you get a cargo policy. You're a carrier, right? You need a cargo policy to operate. No, you don't need a cargo policy to operate. You should. You used to. Let's say you go out, you get yourself a cargo insurance, motor truck cargo policy, and a claim happens, and you think, aha, that thing I've been paying so much money for, I finally get to use. So you send the claim to your insurance carrier. And depending on the insurance carrier, depending on the policy you have, they very well might farm that claim out to a TPA. And the TPA's pitch is kind of unsavory. If you are looking at those pitches from an insurance carrier standpoint, they kind of goes like this. Are cargo claims taking a long time? Are they expensive for you? Hire my firm. I know a ton about claims. I'll decline every one for you. So your claim so often is not being handled by like the insurance underwriter. It's being handled by a TPA who may or may not have advertised themselves in an unsavory way. And that TPA gets paid on a per claim basis. So they have this massive stack of claims that they're handling, way more claims than anyone should be handling reasonably. And their only job is to machine gun down as many of these things as possible, as quickly as possible. But your place in line might take a long time to get to. So a lot of people have this experience. I'm waiting. I've received a declination that has absolutely no reasoning. What just happened? It took 5 months and I have no idea why my claim isn't getting paid.
Vague letter that says, sorry, we're not paying for your claim.
Yeah, we were searching for coverage this whole time and we just couldn't find it.
When you ask for a reason where there isn't coverage, they won't give you any reason. They don't know they made it up.
Well,
I'm angry about this question. That's why. You guys can tell me.
Well, that's part of the tough part is that the policy is a contract between the motor carrier and the insurance carrier. So if you are working with the motor carrier's insurance carrier, it's really tempting to be like, why? Why aren't you paying my claim? And they'll give you a really satisfying answer like, well, we can't tell you. We encourage you to go talk to the motor carrier. And you're like, but the motor carriers never replied to any of my Yeah. So I was really counting on you to explain this to me. Yeah. So that's one reason why your claims might be taking a long time once you
Yeah.
pitch them to the insurer.
I'll tell you, Kyle, okay, because I ran a insurance department and I had a bunch of adjusters reporting to me in trucking. So this is what I'm going to tell you an insider secret, Kyle. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. So put in your calendar reminders like every 3 frickin' days and just drive those insurance adjusters nuts. And they just keep coming back, keep coming back. But don't give them new things every single time. And then, by the way, if they're not responding to you, start looking for other people at their company and escalate it. And the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So it's just like sales. You got to be in front of that, and you got to be in front of that insurance adjuster all the time. And every insurance adjuster is going to want to punch me in the face for that advice, but it's true. We got to
I
do
was going to
what's best for our
say,
customers.
I would add one thing to that, just as someone who handles claims professionally all day, every day. Do be petulant. There's a kernel of truth there for sure, but be pleasant.
Yes, always be
No
pleasant.
matter how diabolical your adjuster is being in a situation, I guarantee you they're a human. And no matter how rough the situation is, you should always treat them like a human.
Because if you make them mad, then that just goes against all your efforts, though. Because then they're going to be like,
Yes,
oh man, you're denied. I don't even care why you're
I'm
denied.
going to use the tools at my disposal to make you hurt now.
Nah,
you
you're
know,
the sweetest
here's a
pie.
reservation of rights letter.
Yeah. Ooh. Yeah. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. There's still a lot of questions coming in, but I got to make sure that I am staying true to what I said, which was open mic night. So, Chris, you are welcome to continue to stay with us. I'm gonna pop in. If anybody wants to have open mic night, you can talk about cargo claims. You can ask me and Chris anything. There's nothing we haven't seen, and we can brainstorm with you, we can help you, or you guys can get on and talk about whatever you want. Again, no companies, no logos, no selling, and just be polite if you can. I don't want anybody crazy coming on here and be like, Cassandra, you just made my life a living hell by telling everybody the squeaky wheel gets grease. So I'm going to bring on Danye, and I'm going to bring on Drew, and we'll get the party started with this, but I need a little like dance music or something. Ooh. I need to like, don't you need to dance it out after listening to cargo claims? At least I do. Ron still has PTSD from this song. So if you raise your hand, that means that you want to come on and be part of the show. All right. Whoa, why are we looking at somebody's screen? Let's not do that. Stop participants sharing. Okay, so let's start. Okay, so don't share your screen. That's another rule. Hi, Drew. You're gonna have to mute yourself so we can see you. And there's Danye. Hi, Danye.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing well, thanks for asking.
You're one of our Madtropolis favorite people.
Thank you.
You've been with us for a while. So I think you're an insurance agent, right?
Yes.
Well rehearsed in our industry. What have you been thinking this whole time we've been having this chat?
I love it. It's deep. It happens all the time. You really should be on top of this. And it's not, there's just so many pieces to it,
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, we as agents file the claim, but then we send it to the MGA. The MGA sends it to their TPA.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like, as well, like he said, oh yeah, I'm going to deny all your claims. And then we're stuck in the middle there, getting it from the shipper, the insured.
Absolutely. Hey, Danya, can I ask you a question? And it's okay if you don't know the answer and you've never heard of this. Over the past 2 years, there's been a trend,
Okay.
where I have tried to submit cargo claims on behalf of my clients, or they come to me and really, V? Really? Okay, sorry, Danya. Okay.
No, you're fine.
I'm going to smack the shit out of V right now. You're lucky you're in Canada. Okay, so Danya,
Where did you get that? That's great.
V, why are you wearing a Cornell shirt? You guys are so mean to me.
I'm here with serious questions, but I'll wait until everybody else.
This is the second time somebody's come on with that exact shirt on. Okay, you're all lucky you're virtual, every one of you. Danye, the question is, which I've been frustrated with lately, is that I'll reach out, or my client will reach out to an insurance adjuster, not adjuster, insurance agent,
Mhm.
and say, hey, I need the information to file a claim. And the insurance broker will say, sorry, we're not going to give you that information.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of our MGAs and underwriters don't want us to share that information.
So what are we supposed to do in that situation? Have you experienced that, Chris?
Yeah, absolutely.
I get so annoyed, and I'm like, I'm just going to freaking sue you then, personally.
I have forwarded the information though, because I don't think it's fair.
I don't either.
And I mean, if I'm emailing you and I've already done my part, and especially if I have nothing to hide and all my bases are covered, I had everything listed, the driver, everything. Why are you not, what's the delay? What's the holdup? Or at least why the lack of communication?
Yeah.
At this point, I'm just like, go ahead, call them.
Yeah, it's tough. It frustrates me.
They do engage after we do that. They're not happy. They do, I do get an earful back, but I'm like, but I only reached out so many times.
Yeah, that's frustrating. I'm sure that you anger your clients doing that, but I feel like that's the right thing to do because there's some obligation there, and I'm going to get to it. I'm going to get an insurance attorney. I'm just going to ask him or her because I'm good with insurance, but not that good. I just threatened to sue everybody. So I'm going to pop you. Do you have anything else to leave us with, Danye?
Couple of questions. I posted them there.
Let me see. Okay, I'll try to get to them. I want to give
Two.
you a chance. I see. Oh, you hit on a big one. Chris is going to like this one. She says if the policy doesn't pay out because the reefer unit did not
Malfunction.
and the carrier is not found liable. Ooh, this is going to hit a nerve with me. Why does the broker file in court against the carrier? Furthermore, when the broker even paid the load, only when they ask carriers to go on an additional stop and then they have a clean bill. Okay, so let's start with the first part. So many carriers have, for those of you moving shipments via reefer units, their insurance policies have so many holes, don't they, Chris? It's
I think all motor truck cargo policies, but yes, especially so reefer.
Mm-hmm.
So before I tender a shipment, if it's over $100,000 or if it's a shipment for a really good shipper, I actually call the insurance broker like you, Danye, and I say, hey, can you tell me what the exclusions are in their reefer policy? Because I get so worried that there's going to be an exclusion because some will not pay because driver made an error with the temperature setting. But the carrier is still liable, Danya. Just because the insurance doesn't pay, the carrier still has to pay.
I'm super interested in the second half of the first sentence, right? So if the reefer unit does not malfunction and the carrier is not found liable, so what pray tell is the problem? If the reefer unit didn't malfunction and the carrier is not liable, is the shipper looking at their thermometer upside down? Is their temp-tel record completely wrong and it says it was 10,000 degrees in transit the whole time?
No, it was actually frozen. Like they're claiming that they placed, the product was already, the lettuce was already, like freezer burned already. It wasn't because of the reefer. I mean, that was this particular scenario anyhow.
Did the carrier
condition
know
at origin
that there was freezer burn when the carrier picked up the goods?
Apparently they don't, a lot of times they don't let them see it at packing. They don't let them on there and it's till it gets there. Furthermore, they told them, okay, here, take it to another stop. They signed clean bills though. They got paid.
Right there. They signed a clean bill. Like what I tell my drivers to do if they can is notate the bill saying, and this answers Tony's question too. If you can't get on that dock and you can't look at the shipment, you need to write it on the bill of lading. I could not look at the shipment, was not allowed on the dock. That you have to put that on there.
Okay.
On the subject of clean bills, though, because you can't have a conversation about clean bills without saying the bill of lading notations at origin and at delivery merely establish a rebuttable presumption of the condition of the goods at those times. And that presumption is subject to rebut with all kinds of evidence, right? So maybe the shipper has evidence that it was not freezer burned at delivery, or maybe the consignee has evidence that even though there's a clean bill, yeah, here's a picture of it damaged on the carrier's trailer prior to unloading. So yes, clean bills often bode in the carrier's favor and in the insurer's favor, if you want to look at it that way. but let's not act like clean bills are some immovable object, right? It's a rebuttable presumption.
Right. Okay. And I have
Carrier's up
another.
Schitt's Creek. Here's the thing, because if you accept the
Yeah.
shipment and you didn't
Mhm.
notate the bill of lading and say that the goods are already damaged or you weren't able to identify the goods, already you're liable if right away you're liable if those goods show up damaged. So then the carrier has to prove with pictures or something otherwise that the goods were received damaged. They can't just say it. That's not proof.
Right.
If they don't have proof, they're up Schitt's Creek. You got a problem. Now, the other thing is I want you to look at the contracts between the parties, because the contracts can change a lot of what I'm saying.
Mhm.
But you can see how hard this is. This is a tough situation. And it's not an easy answer. But at the end of the day, I want you guys to all know that the responsibility lies with carriers. So you'll see that Ingrid often shows up on our shows. Ingrid moves a lot of odd commodities, and she's a very good truck driver. But she talks about this constantly, that she is responsible. The second it touches her truck, she's responsible for those goods. And that's the way the law is too. There are like only 5 excuses we're not going to talk about on here. But those excuses, they are an excuse. But what I'm saying is that the carriers accept the goods without notating the bill of ladings. Then if they show up different than what they should have been received, they should have been loaded as, they're liable. It's a tough situation.
Oh.
And I forgot to tell you guys, for those of you who are interested in actually getting some training on cargo, and Donnie, you already know this because you've gotten the training, I'm going to have, actually, Donnie, you get to show up this Thursday if you want, but next Thursday, 2 o'clock, on Zoom, I'm going to do a 1-hour intense training. Donnie, you've been to it, right?
Yeah.
You can go to it again, but it's the same one that you've been to. And we're going to talk about cargo claims. I'm going to teach you how to process the cargo claims and the very big basics of cargo claims, so that it's especially good for newer carriers and brokers who want to learn how to process them and protect themselves. So I should probably put that link somewhere in the, so you guys know. But this is a paid course. This isn't for free. Sorry, folks. Cassandra can only work for free for so long. All right, Donnie, I'm going to throw you back in. I love you to pieces. Thank you for being with us continuously.
Thank you.
And you're awesome. And anybody who needs an insurance agent, reach out to Danya. She's really good. I'm going to pop her back in. Drew, you were next. Drew, how are you?
Just finding yourself.
Good. What state are you calling from?
Seattle, Washington.
Ooh, nice.
Yep.
And it looks like you have sun coming in through your windows.
Yeah, a little bit. It's cloudy though, overcast. The window was just open, you know.
What did you think of the conversation?
Oh, I thought it was great. Like a lot of things that you guys had to say. Chris, specifically, you were talking about you would tell drivers that in situations where they couldn't count the freight to do to note like shipper load and count. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and that would be present on the dock at that time.
Well, oftentimes drivers can't be present on a dock, and that's a big problem because the situation the driver is in is, hey, back your trailer in, and then I need you to get out of here. You're not allowed on the dock. You're not allowed to see what I'm doing. And then I want you to sign this onerous bill of lading contract right afterwards, right?
Right.
In those situations, if the driver can't confirm the pieces in the truck, the best thing they can do for the purpose of whatever may come later is to just make it apparent some way clearly on the bill of lading, I had no opportunity to count this stuff.
Right. Okay, I understand. Because I've had situations where drivers were actually on the dock, and it was a pallet, situation, maybe like 12, 13 pallets, but the cartons were in such a situation the driver couldn't actually count them. But on the bill of lading, the shipper would have a piece count versus a pallet count. And so what I would say to the driver is that if you're not able to count it, at least note on the bill of lading the situation that the freight looked like and why you couldn't count it, versus, say, for instance, signing for 300 pieces and they may not be there at delivery. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, exactly. I would advise the same thing every time.
Right.
And sometimes you'll get a significant amount of pushback from shippers. From time to time, I think I saw a question in the YouTube. It was like, hey, shippers don't let me sign shipper loaded and counted. And if that's the case, I think that all parties involved need to kind of pull back and have kind of a serious conversation. Like, hey, we're all business partners, shipper, broker, carrier. Let's act like partners. What are we doing here? Because you're loading 7,000 cases at a time on a trailer. You're telling the carrier, I don't care if you can't count them, you've got to sign for them like you could. Seems excessive, right?
Right.
Try to work through it in a business-like way, that way. But yeah, it can be rough. And a lot of the times, what carriers will say to me is, look, I'm not in the business of refusing loads, Chris. I'm in the business of hauling loads. And what you're saying is if I can't count the pieces, I should walk away from the shipment. And what I'm saying is maybe not that cut and dry. Instead, you have to think about the risk. If I'm signing for 100,000 pieces and there's no way I can count them, is that an acceptable risk for me and my business? For some businesses, maybe the customer relationship is such that it is an acceptable risk. For an owner-op with a light customer relationship or a light broker relationship, maybe that's not worth the risk, because who knows what the consignee is going to say they received at destination.
And for those of you who can't write on the bill of lading because of COVID, because I saw that in the comments as well, I've been saying this since the beginning of COVID. That doesn't mean that the driver can't just call somebody or email somebody or something like that. Drew, stick with us for a little while. I'm excited to have you here. I think that you're a good resource to Madtropolis, so look forward to hearing from you again. Jess, what's up, Jess? You are next.
Hi.
How are you? You're gonna have to move the microphone closer to you, I think.
Sorry. I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Oh, 1 second. It might be going through my computer mic and not my actual.
That's what I was thinking too. Here, I'll give you a second to adjust so you can kind of figure it out. Check your settings on Zoom, and then I'll go over to my troublemaker from Canada. V, did you? Oh shoot, I just muted you again. V, did you go to Cornell? My school?
It was a fantastic experience. Some really nice parties. I got a great education.
Mm-hmm. All right, now I know you're lying because there wasn't any good parties. I lived in that damn library.
That's not what YouTube tells me. I don't know.
I gotta check it out then because there were no.
They're having Corona parties out there. They're on a different level. Oh, jeez.
So, did you? I think you were the one with the question about your goods. Maybe.
Yeah. It was. I had the question about what if finding lost packages takes too long. Obviously, FTL is not what that was. I'm just curious. I was just curious in general, right? Because it's hard to tell. Hey, is a carrier just saying that because they're saying it, or are they actually looking, right?
Like those of us who have dealt with like stolen full truckloads, it takes us a while to figure out that they're stolen unless you're really experienced in it. Because the driver for a while will give us a bunch of BS about maintenance or family death or blah, blah, blah. And really the entire shipment's stolen. But go ahead, I'm sorry.
In situations like that, you have to think of the LTL environment, right? And don't tell anyone, but your skids are probably getting broken down. And the way LTL works, it's a hub and spoke system. You've got people making...
Guys are a bunch of assholes.
Oh man, why did I not get that email before this? That's awesome. Oh man. So you've got a situation where carriers are making pickups, bringing it back to their terminal, then consolidating those shipments onto long hauls out to other hub and spoke systems. And part of the LTL carrier's profitability is in cubing out that trailer as much as possible, the consolidated trailer. And in so doing, in trying to achieve that maximum cube, they're probably breaking your skids down. And the plan is to reconstitute them on the other end. You can imagine cases get lost. And the conversation that's going on behind the scenes is there's this whole team of OSD people, and their job is insane. Because the premise that they start working on every day is there's a box, it's brown, it's about this big, it's got my cargo in it, and it's lost somewhere in America. Or maybe Puerto Rico, we go there too. Can you find that box? And the OSD team goes through, the carrier's OSD team is going to go through each manifest, see each time that shipment was broken, and really try to hunt down your freight. So if you're dealing with a reputable carrier, that's exactly what's happening. Someone is making a ton of calls, looking at manifests, trying to track down your one box that's brown, that's somewhere in America. Here's what I'd do, right? I would file the claim right away, and I'd just say, here, there's the cargo claim. Oh, wow. And if the carrier can find the box before it comes time to pay the cargo claim and they return it to you in good order, good for them. If they can't, then they got to pay your claim.
Okay. Hey, Cass, and that's helpful, and that's kind of, we hope that everybody's being legitimate and honest, and if it takes time, it takes time.
I'm a lawyer. I think everybody's
who knows. Cassandra, I actually had a
related question.
No, a non-cargo claim-related question. Can I ask that before I? Of
course.
I go. So this is.
Guys, I just want to have this too as a background.
We can. That'll be next on the shopping list. I'm still waiting for mine.
You guys are a bunch of assholes.
No, it's all out of love. Look at the love. Hey, so I have a question. Since this is open mic night, I have a question to all our broker and carrier friends, and this is very of the times, because I'm curious how carriers are dealing with service failures right now. Specifically, I understand that a lot of carriers just can't hit their regular KPIs, and that's understandable, but I guess my two questions would be, when do you draw the line in the sand and say, hey, like, we're just not doing a good enough job here? And the second part of that, how do you solve this? How do you figure it out? How do you continue to provide a good service when your service is failing, like way below like even the 90% threshold? Like, what are people doing these days to combat this?
I'm so curious to see, and let's give it a little time to catch up on LinkedIn and YouTube. I'm so curious to see who's going to come on as carriers. And I thought I saw Jeff Carr. I bet he's going to want to come back on. I thought I saw Jeff Carr in here. But who wants to answer that as a carrier? Because it is a tough time right now. Oh, Jess, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Oh, wait, you have to unmute yourself because I can't. I messed it all up.
There you go. I'm actually working. Sorry, can you hear me now? Yes. I'm actually working for.
We've had you for a while too at Madtropolis. You're not new.
No, for a couple of months, and I've, haven't had very much time to
go out and buy a Cornell shirt.
Yeah.
There'll be a link in the comments.
Sorry, you've been so patient.
It's all right. So I'm working with a carrier right now, and their CSA rating is not good.
Like above the threshold?
Yeah.
You know how many brackets?
No, I'd have to look it up, but I know that it's bad.
Okay.
Multiple accidents, bad drivers, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And I know that going into making that call before, so I try and deal with brokers that I know we're already signed up with. I try and deal with the smaller brokers. We deal with one smaller refrigerated broker a lot, and he gets one of our guys a whole lot of loads. I mean, there's only about 10 trucks right now.
That you have? You're a carrier, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh.
I'm working for carriers. I'm actually starting my own dispatch service, I guess you would call it.
We have questions for you, actually.
Yes.
We have quite a few questions about this.
Yeah, it's challenging to say the least. And my father's actually, he's an owner operator, and he is getting his own operating authority. So all of this is not new, but
run under the MC you're running under now?
No, he wants his own.
Okay. So one thing you just reminded me that I've never told anyone before. This is a really interesting trick, okay? If you want your CSA scores to improve, get as many inspections as you possibly can. Your drivers know where the routes are to get inspected. Get as many as you can. Because the more inspections you have, that's the better your numbers are going to get. And then if you can, add more trucks to your, like, you know how you have to report to the MCF, you have to report how many trucks you have?
Yes.
Add more trucks there. Make sure that's accurate. Go through it. Make sure everything's accurate. The number of drivers, the number of trucks, and the VIN numbers. But get as many inspections as you can. The drivers who are avoiding inspection locations are actually doing themselves a disservice. And I'm telling you guys, the CSA scores are private. If you use Carrier 411, he calculates his own scores his own way, which I know exactly what way he does it. If you use like Truck Stop and Safer Sys, they calculate it their own ways. But getting as many inspections as possible is what you want to do to improve that score, okay? And then making sure your MCS 150 is correct.
Thank you for that tidbit.
I've never told anyone, and I don't think anybody really knows that trick either. So keep it to yourself too. So did you have a question though? I kind of interrupted you.
I forget. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I
tell
totally
us about
forget.
let me ask you something. What's the difference between a dispatcher and a broker?
Basically, I'm not double brokering. I'm not working with the material. I'm working with the drivers. I have drivers. You have freight. You want to put your freight on my trucks. That's how.
Are they your trucks?
No, they're not my trucks.
There we go.
Yeah, they're not mine.
Let me ask this, Jess, as I'm super confused about this. Chris, do you know the answer to this? The freight coach?
Oh, in regards to
what's the difference between a broker and a dispatcher?
I mean, coming from her standpoint, so like I've definitely worked with individuals like Jess in the past, and that was more for like the specialized freight aspect of it. Like if I needed 12 RGNs, for example, I would, somebody like Jess might have all of those 12 drivers in her network, as opposed to going directly to an asset who might only be able to come up with 5 of them, for example. So I've had really good success in working with individuals who are in Jess's shoes. I find that their reach is a lot bigger than just going with one carrier, for example. But I mean, I don't have a ton of knowledge of what, like she's doing from that standpoint. But I definitely have had success with them because she's generally attached to a larger company who it's almost like an independent agent for a freight broker. For example, you run under their operation and source carriers through themselves.
Okay.
Is that close, Jess, or?
Yeah, it's pretty close. I mean, I have 2 different MC numbers that I have right now, and then my dad will make a third. And we specialize in reefer because the way that they look at it, and the one company, well, 2 of the companies do own their own reefer trailers. That is our trailers, and that is there's a couple of owner operators that just run under the MC, and then that is, they are our trailers, and they say you can basically put anything in a reefer. It's the best decision financially for them. That's why they decide to buy reefers instead of just regular van trailers. They're vented.
Somebody in the crowd is asking for your MC number, Jess, if you wanted to give it out. Might want to, if you feel like giving it out, go ahead and type it into the comments in YouTube or in LinkedIn. It's completely up to you. Did you by any chance have an idea or an answer for V, our shipper's question with regards to performance? I would be interested if we have carriers, and maybe Marina will come on.
I was gonna say, coming from a broker's standpoint, like I just pay it and move on. Like I don't like if I know I'm graded off of a percentage like that, like in most cases, it's like 96, 97% failure rate. If I'm pushing the limit that much to where I'm underneath it, I mean, I know this is kind of counterproductive, but I almost would rather not move your freight anymore if I can't hold up my end of the bargain, because I feel like I'm completely tarnishing anything anyway. So I'd rather just get ahead of it. But if it's a seasonality thing where I have to lose for like a month to protect the relationship from a 12-month standpoint, I'm going to take those losses and move on. But if I just completely shot myself in the foot and I am nowhere near it and I'm not available to take losses, I'm just going to have to say that I'm sorry I failed. That's just coming from me personally. I know some people will try and beat around the bush, but I don't believe in that. I've been down that road before. So.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Teal, we are lucky to have you. We are extremely lucky to have you, except for your sarcastic attitude, your comments, and your T-shirt. Because I don't think these T-shirts are coming from a good place, you guys.
It was completely random. It was all a coincidence, honestly.
Yeah, lucky star.
Mr. Teal, what questions do you have for us?
So I have two questions, probably for Chris, and I do apologize if they were covered because I'm working at the same time. One, who determines what that value of the cargo is? If I'm a shipper and say I'm moving it from production to one of my own stores, do I get to claim that it's the actual retail value, or is it replacement value? And then second question is, quite honestly, the most often cargo insurance I see is $100,000. Nothing's getting cheaper. So when you process a claim, are you seeing like 40% kind of fall underneath that 100,000 and then the other 60 go up between that and two? I mean, what's the next level up that maybe a shipper or a carrier should say, hey, I really need to invest in this because quite honestly, a lot of my shipments are starting to come into that value level.
Yeah, so first things first, measures of loss is one of my favorite subjects. And it's one of my favorite subjects because people try to do all this cute stuff, and there are so many misconceptions in this area, right? So real quick, the measure of loss in a cargo claim is the full actual loss, right? What you are out. If you are doing an intra-plant move and you're moving stuff from yourself to yourself, you're still due whatever you would sell that for at market. And you're going to run into a lot of people that say like, oh, well, profit's not recoverable. Maybe if the consignee was making the claim, the retail or the, whatever they paid for it would be what the claim is due. But no, because you, the shipper, are filing the claim, the whole thing is different and all the measures of loss change. False, false, false. That's not true. You are always due whatever the destination market value of that item is. And there are, like I said, lots of cute theories around this. At the end of the day, here's what I would advise. In your contracts, just say the measure of loss is going to be invoice value, whether it's an intra-company shipment or sending it out to your customer. Just put it in the contract with your motor carriers that invoice value is the thing. This will save you a million headaches when the carrier's insurer tries to deploy a bunch of super creative theories on measures of loss for you. So you can skip all of the case law debate with the insurer if you just say it's invoice value. Cassandra.
And no, and I was thinking that was most of the reason for, I hate it when shippers try to go for retail value, because what happens is those who don't read their contracts, I see you, V, those of you who don't read their contracts don't catch that the shipper wants retail value. And the thing is, insurance doesn't cover for retail value. So that drives me nuts, Chris, because it puts somebody who's filing the claim and trying to get insurance coverage, the adjuster's going to come back and say, we don't pay for retail value. No insurer pays for retail value. It needs to be that commercial invoice. It's a good question, Andrew. What was your second? Did you guys address the second question?
No. What was part two again?
The part two was, it seems to me, and this is just
a really big brain. And
no, I've just got a really big shirt size. The second part is the most common cargo, limit is 100,000 that I see. In your experience, is that too low? What's the next step? Just because, I start thinking about inflation, and it probably doesn't take a whole lot in a 53-foot trailer to hit 100K these days, depending on what you're moving, obviously. So when you're processing your claims and things like that, are you saying, hey, wow, very, very little is coming across at 100K or less, and a lot of it seems to be in this band? What kind of, just from a general advice idea would you say, hey, you ought to start looking at, we've kind of talked about it with liability. You got to start looking at maybe raising your floor a little bit.
Yeah, and I think you're spot on there. I remember telling people that 250 was the new 100 like 10 years ago, right? And it's weirdly still not. So I think the plan was that the invisible hand after deregulation would just keep rates in tune with the market. And guess what? The hand is invisible because it's just not there, right? And the limits that we set during deregulation at that time, at the dawn of the 80s, are still here. Mm-hmm. So on whether or not we need a higher limit, listen, between just the three of us and the internet, yeah, the limits all need to go and it's absolutely bizarre. Regulation. Sorry, I have a cold. But I would say this, in terms of making sure coverage lines up with the cargo you're putting on the trailer, you have to think about the right carrier for the right shipment. So in your portfolio of carriers, whether you're a broker or a shipper, you know that you've got some fantastic, super capitalized carriers, right? With a very sophisticated insurance system. Maybe they're operating, their own captive, right? And then you've got your owner op who has a budget policy. It's all he could afford. It doesn't really cover anything. It's riddled with exclusions, and it has low coverage maximums, right? Not every load is valued at $100,000. So the challenge then is pairing the right carrier with the right coverage limit to the shipment. And I would say, would I sleep better at night if every motor carrier, one, had to have cargo insurance, which is a requirement that they nixed, and two, if those limits were, I don't know, $250,000, $500,000 per truckload, feels about right to me in 2020. Who am I? Yes, I would sleep better if that was the case. But given that it is not, the closest thing you can do is just pay really special attention to pairing. And, if depending on your own perspective, if you're a shipper, seriously look into all risk shippers' interest, because you can have a great carrier with a fantastic policy and circumstances are such that it doesn't afford coverage. And I don't care how capitalized you are, if you're the biggest carrier in the entire world and someone makes a $250,000 claim, that's going to cause a lot of heartburn, no matter how much coverage you have, especially if it doesn't apply. So if you're a shipper,
mean bombs, because Chris is being so nice, you guys, right now. But I'm gonna be mean because he can't, and deep down inside.
Well, thank you, Chris. I appreciate the niceness that is kind of standing out on this show now at this point. So watch me get booted, guaranteed. But I appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Likewise.
He doesn't appreciate anything. He's lying. I'm telling you, he's lying. I'm booting you back into you have an attitude today. You're lucky you're in Wisconsin. Drinking spotted cow. Okay, ready, you guys? Carriers. If you're going to move a load, make sure that you have a contract that limits your liability to a maximum of $100,000. Do not move any load ever unless you have a contract that says the maximum you're going to pay on cargo liability is $100,000. Why? Because shippers tender full truckload shipments to carriers that are worth more than $100,000. Okay? Carriers, that's your rule number one. Shippers, know the value of your full truckload, know the value of your per pound for any partial or for LTL, and ask brokers and carriers how much insurance they have, and make sure that they know what the value is. Because what happens is you tender a shipment, it's over $100,000 in value, the broker gives it to a carrier, the carrier runs a load, the shipment gets damaged somehow, the carrier only has $100,000, unless you have a contract you can't sue the broker for it, you're shit out of luck for whatever is above the value of the $100,000. Brokers, make sure you do not have a cap in your contract for carriers that says the maximum they're going to pay is $100,000. Yeah, that was fucked up. That was like complete opposite. I know, that was fucked up. But what I'm telling you guys is that I'm giving you different advice because that's the advice that you need. So brokers, if the carriers only have $100,000, that's all they can pay in insurance. You need to ask the shippers what the value of the shipment is. Because if the shippers have $250,000 and you signed a contract saying that you will pay no matter what, any cargo amount, period, to the shipper, and the carrier only has $100,000, that means you're paying whatever's the gap is, which is $150,000. Okay, I'm done ranting. Marina, our new favorite person. Tell us how your week has been with the blitz. You might have to unmute. Okay. With the blitz and the driver shortage, but higher rates and cargo claims. Like, what's going on in your world? Tell us.
Hello. Happy to be here. Love this show. This was so good. I like everything about it because I was just dealing with something like that. I was mentioning in the comments to Vitaly.
Oh, yeah. I forgot. Amanda said you had a question. Give me one second. Let's talk about your question if you don't mind.
You can read up and I'll tell you about my week. It's been great. Blitz hasn't affected us. I wish my trucks got pulled over and got inspected so I can get an even lower rate, but nothing's, so we haven't had any issues there. I'm not one of those carriers that's like, okay, everybody's on vacation. I don't know. I've had some brokers ask me, are you working next week? I'm like, yes, I'm working next week. What do you mean, am I working next week? I think it's kind of strange that he's even asked. Rates, it's been so busy. I wish I had more trucks. I wish I could handle more. One way that we are making sure that we stay on top of performance is actually refusing what we cannot do. Like, I am not over promising, but sometimes we do fall into that range. And I'll tell you, like, a little secret of what we do differently is that everybody in this office except me has their CDL. So I have like 7 guys in the office who are dispatchers, safety, operations, all of them have their CDL licenses. So we do a kind of a consolidated model where we have over the road and local deliveries. So if somebody gets sick, if something happens, we make one of them jump on there and deliver. So there's like 99.99 delivery. So our performance is really good because we go above and beyond. So it's a family-owned company. My husband and I started about 8 years ago. So we do whatever it takes. Like if he has a CDL, he started driving. His brother was dispatching and I was doing the invoicing. Now we're up to 30 trucks. So it's been all, our own trucks. But
I love it. So your question, I found it because Amanda Miller has been feeding me questions. I'm lucky to have her. She says, the shipper, Chris is going to like this one. The shipper claims shortage, Chris, on a sealed full truckload.
It's happened to me twice.
Hold on, let me just...
Twice. This happened to me twice.
The truck goes from point A to point B without any issues.
Mm-hmm.
Seal is intact, Chris. Bill Lading says subject to count. Now the carrier is responsible for the shortage.
Yeah. That's where we're at.
It's a bunch of bullshit. But go ahead, Chris. I'm sorry. Opinion. Chris is a nice one.
Oh, geez. Well, that's maybe not a great setup for my answer here. I'm feeling a 2-word answer on this one, and I kind of apologize in advance, but it's so what? So what? So the seal was delivered intact. That's a great fact. I'm glad, but it doesn't relieve the carrier of liability, right? Because just to be totally above board and honest, and a reputable carrier would never do this, so I'm not insinuating. But is it possible to pilfer a truckload and deliver it with the seal intact? Yes, it is. It's very possible, right? So for that reason, being delivered with the seal intact is a fact that should be taken into consideration in the claim, but by no means does that fact on its own relieve the motor carrier of liability. You still have to.
That's what we were told. They're like, well, it says subject to count. That's the worst thing you could have in the BOL. You have to make him cross it out. I'm like, I don't.
It's the worst. Honestly, you're in the toughest position. Go ahead, Chris.
That's an interesting fact, though. So did the consignee note shortage at delivery?
No.
Delivery, they didn't?
Okay.
They did not write it on delivery. It was only like 2 weeks later that this was discovered.
All right. I changed my answer, same 2 words, but now I'm looking at the shipper or whoever's making the claim. So what, right? So what? You wrote subject to count. That's cute. I drew a little picture of a horse on my, POD, and they have the same meaning when it comes to cargo claims. Subject to count is meaningless. It's as good as if you drew a smiley face and a sunset on the POD, because it doesn't tell you anything about the condition of the cargo. So whenever people wade into this, I usually tell them, think about it this way, right? You have in front of you, perhaps, a computer, a keyboard, and if you're so unfortunate, you might even have Chris Olson in front of you, right? And you could say that these things, the computer, the keyboard, and Chris Olson, are subject to inspection. But that doesn't tell you anything about the condition of the computer. Like that mine has this super shallow keyboard that I despise typing on. It doesn't tell you that in lieu of that, I've purchased a beautiful mechanical keyboard. And it doesn't tell you that Chris Olson is perhaps under duress because some accident is occurring in the background, right? To say that I am subject to inspection tells you nothing about my condition. And for that reason, it's not a notation that carries any weight or merit for the purpose of the cargo claim.
Okay, so this is what I'd do if I were you, Marina.
Okay.
Because it's been 2 weeks, right?
Mhm.
So Chris tells, you guys are already getting the hang of this. Chris is nice. Chris he follows like super the rules. He's really good. Cassandra is Better Call Saul ghetto with this shit. So here's what I would do. Take Chris's advice, everything he said is correct. And then add on top of it. Be like, hey, it took you 2 weeks to report this shortage. What's your proof that no one stole it right there at your warehouse? Because you have to prove the damage. So I'm going to say this on video so you can replay it, and then you can like say it exactly, because what happens is the insurance adjuster is not going to believe you, so you probably are going to have to hire a lawyer depending on the value, because that's what happens with insurance adjusters. But here's the thing, is that goods arrived in good condition. Carrier picks it up. Carrier delivers. Consignee did not sign or notate the damage or missing goods, right? The missing goods. After that, if the consignee or the shipper wants to claim that the goods are missing, they have to give you proof. They can't just voila 2 weeks later and say it. They gotta actually give you proof. They have to take pictures, like here are all the goods. They've been sitting here for 2 weeks. Here's a statement from Joe Schmo saying that they've been sitting there for 2 weeks. He remembers taking it off. He remembers counting it at that time. Here are the pictures. Like, they have to give you something. They can't just say 2 weeks later, we're missing, okay? They can actually, but we're going to say it here. So push for additional evidence. And you're a good carrier, right? From a reasonableness standard. Like, this is, you guys probably lost it in your warehouse, and now you're making me pay for your losing it. Like, it arrived sealed. What the fuck?
And it wasn't a team load. So it got there in 24 hours.
Oh,
like,
come on, people.
Yeah. This is from like North Carolina to Texas, that area. I mean, like at no time, I'm like, I can send you my GPS data on this truck showing
Is there a broker involved here?
Yes.
Start pleading to the broker too. Yeah. And be like, hey, we're a good carrier for you guys. Right now, it is hard to find good carriers for good rates. We've done a good job for you guys. This is fucking unfair. It's unfair. And this is the first time I'm actually swearing, but this is bull. Chris, do you want to argue otherwise? Because I'm getting real heated up because I'm defensive over carriers. But if you want to argue otherwise, it's okay too. I'll calm myself.
Yeah, I think a subject to count notation and shortage claim 2 weeks later is a bit repugnant. So yeah, no, I would definitely push back on that. And really what I would say is, you know, the claimant has to prove two things, right? What they put on the truck and what came off the truck. And that's all they have to do. And it's this spectacularly low burden of proof, right? A claimant could sneeze and accidentally meet their burden of proof. That's how weak it is. And in this case, I don't think that they've done it because you've got the condition at origin, and at destination you have, we'll think about it later. Well, that's not the same as we're missing something.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
You're very, very welcome. Thank you for being with us and joining us. I hope you come again on Friday. We love hearing from you, so I'm going to pop you back into the attendee section. Chris, I have a question that I want to answer really fast, and I want you to tell me what you think, too. Okay, this is actually an incredibly hard question from Andrew, which is not Andrew Teal, it's Andrew Colville. Hi, Ingrid. We'll be with you in just a minute. Oh, you look so beautiful today.
Thank you.
Andrew asked this, and I had to learn this the hard way. When shipping a partial truckload shipment on a full truckload carrier, how is the insured value calculated? And I like that Andrew is talking about this because no one thinks this way. Andrew, this is what I do for partial shipments, okay? Now I can't remember. Okay, so I assume every carrier is $100,000. So I also assume that a carrier is probably going to move a maximum of what, 44,000 pounds? Is that right, Ingrid? You probably can put about 44,000 pounds of cargo on there. So I do 100,000. Wait, where's Cassandra's calculator? Because I haven't done this in like 5 years. Hold on. $100,000 in insurance divided by 44,000 pounds is $2.27, $2.30 a pound. Okay? Andrew, hold on to that. You're going to get $2.30 per pound is the way I look at it. So then what you do is you take your partial load, look at the pallets, look at the weight, and then multiply that by $2.30. Then go back to your shipper and ask them, hey, how much is the value of this partial shipment? And if they tell you something that is more than $2.30 per pound, you know you got a fucking problem. Okay? That's the way I view it. Now, I couldn't think of a better way to calculate my risk with a partial shipment because it's only $100,000 on that truck. That's it. And that's why I like the way you're thinking, Andrew, because that's it. That's all you have. So if there's all shippers on there who have way more valued of goods, that's a tough spot. Chris, did you think of anything differently?
Well, really quick, I was going to say, if you're a shipper and you're shipping a very, very expensive thing and you're trying to partial it, buy the full truck, right? Come on.
Come on.
Yeah, like I'm going to go buy a Rolls Royce and then park it on the street. Really? You know? The other thing I would say is I agree with that, but I would just say be careful concerning how the rate was determined. So was the rate determined based upon the linear feet in the trailer that you're using? Was the rate determined based on the weight that you're putting on the trailer?
Truckload, though, aren't they just fucking throwing out prices on truckload? Is it really based on, like...
No comment.
Ingrid, could you help us with that? Like,
we're talking about partials, though.
Yeah, but even with partials, I thought partials more followed the truckload rules because partials kind of like cowboyish, but I could be wrong. You could be right, Chris, and I'm just a dumbass.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I would just say if you want to be hyper paranoid or very sensitive about this, consider the way you're determining the rate, right? Are you buying linear feet? Are you buying weight? Because you're going to get a pro rata amount of the 100,000 or whatever the carrier's got in the event of a covered claim, cause of loss. But just think about how you're determining the rate, because it would be a real bummer if you went through all this and went to court and then someone was like, see here, you paid for 4 linear feet of a 53-foot trailer. Let me do the math, right? So keep that in the back of your mind.
Also, Andrew, make sure that if you're filing a claim on partial, okay, each state has different rules with insurance. I like following the rule of first to fucking file claim. So, Andrew's actually question. Come on, let me pull him on. So I like file that claim as fast as I can against the insurance company because sometimes when you're fighting against insurance limits, it's like first come first serve. Ingrid, how are you? You look relaxed. You're at home instead of in your truck. You've got a suntan.
Got the nappy hair.
It looks good. What's going on?
Thank you.
How's your week?
Kind of weird, but it's okay. I've ended up at doctor's appointments and everything else, but I'm home. That's what matters. So.
And you do look refreshed, though, if that counts.
Thank you. Yes, I feel good.
What do you think of my cargo claims ninja, Chris?
I like Chris. Chris, I like you. Lots of good info. Got lots of good info. Cargo claims, as we all know, definitely lies within a driver. And honestly, the driver is going to be your eyes, your ears, your knowledge, and they can be a big determining factor in what's going to happen, whether it's the care of the shipment, whether it's shortage, overages, whether it's, anything there. They are literally your witness of those things. We've been facing so much with the COVID that we're not allowed on the dock. Okay. I've got shippers that are not letting me sign SLC, shipper load and count. When you can't get on the dock, when you can't even get out of the truck other than open the door, what is it we're supposed to do? Because then it still falls back on me.
Yeah, it does.
I'm still responsible. And whether everybody's going to say, no, you're not. Yes, I am, because that's who I am. I am. And it's going to fall back on the carrier. So this is where we're kind of having we're having a heck of a problem with that. As well as just like berries, just like produce, making sure the quality, pulping, making sure that the bottom boxes aren't going to collapse.
Yes.
We're not able to see this from the front of the trailer to the back of the trailer. So then, we have that thing. I noticed that Tony had something in the comments a while ago about we were facing some stuff, and I think some people were like, what? Here's what's happening. And this just happened this week with another one of our drivers and a driver that loaded beside of him and delivered the same place at a large warehouse, okay? They loaded them, pulped the back 2 pallets, Temperature was great. Both trucks delivered. They rejected both loads. Both. Salesman went, resold the loads, delivered. USDA checked them. They were fine. USDA rejected them at the first place. There was word that was gotten back that someone overbought. They didn't have enough room at the warehouse.
Yeah.
And you want to know who's the one that gets to pay for that? Okay, we could throw dollar figures out, but do you realize how long a truck has to sit to get an appointment, to get somebody to get an appointment? And I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus to say the broker is the one that actually took 6 hours on one truck and 5 on the other truck to decide what they were going to do. Well, now you've got hours of service, you've got a driver that's sitting there, you've got one that's got to figure out, now both trucks had reloads, those are down the tube, and who's going to cover all of this cost? It's not going to be the receiver.
And for
I can promise you that.
Confused about what Ingrid is talking about. A lot of us in the cargo claims world and the trucking world have experienced this, which is the shippers use carriers and brokers as inventory management, which is they don't want that inventory anymore, and they kind of baited the carrier or the broker in taking their freight, and they're going to make the carrier and broker pay for it. How? Via contracts. You want our freight, you got to sign this contract. The contract makes you liable. Brokers take the brunt of this. I know a lot of people don't see this in the industry, but brokers have become the insurance company of the industry for accidents and for cargo. Shippers like to say that they don't use brokers and brokers anymore. Oh, we don't use brokers, blah, 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 blah. They do. They use them, and they use them for inventory control, and they use carriers for inventory control, and it's not very nice. So, Chris, before I dive into my solutions with carriers not being allowed on the dock, not being allowed to inspect anything, do you have anything you would like to add as our cargo claims expert ninja?
Oh gosh, I'd like to spend the rest of the day talking about this, frankly. You know what I mean? Because we could take it as high level as what you were saying, Cassandra, that brokers are becoming the weird surety for any problem that occurs in transit. I think personally, just the opinion of a one Chris Olson, that's bananas, right? And if we look at the way the liability landscape has changed in transportation over the last 10, 15 years, you've seen what I call the liability wars, right? Where shippers try to push it off onto brokers try to push it off onto carriers, and carriers, oh no, there is no one to push it off onto, so carriers default and disappear, because there aren't a lot of options available to them because, the insurance company that was supposed to be, insuring the cargo, they just have 16 different exclusions for this particular problem. So sorry, no coverage, right? So first things first, I think the liability landscape has gotten pretty warped. And an exciting development in transportation would be to see this become more sensible somehow.
Agreed.
To the question, though, I think the roughest part out of everything that you mentioned is the waiting for disposition. And I think that, there's no great advice, you can give to a driver who's sitting there working for free for, you said 5 hours and 6 hours. That's really what I would, if I can talk to the brokers out there, think about what you're doing to the carrier, right? You have this person, they're on site, they've completed transit as you've asked, and now they're getting paid when the truck is rolling, they're getting paid by the mile, they're stopped and they're sitting there for 6 hours. They're not rolling. That means they're not getting paid. Do you like to work for free? Because truck drivers do it a lot, and sometimes they do it a lot because they don't get timely disposition. So thing one for brokers out there, think about what you're doing to motor carriers and handling dispositions. And for shippers, brokers, and carriers, I'd advise this. You really need to think about what your disposition plan is going to be in advance. So before anyone picks up a truckload of berries, especially, and I was triggered when you said berries, before anyone picks up a shipment of berries, I think that all parties involved have to sit down and have an honest conversation about what are we going to do if something goes wrong. Because we can argue on the back end about who's liable and in what measure, but on the front end, we all have an interest in keeping things moving. So to all parties looking to mitigate situations like that, have a plan. And the plan should be to have a quick cost benefit analysis. Like, what do I pay the carrier to sit there and wait for an inspection? Do we cut our losses and consign the cargo to destruction, absorb the claim and move on? Because that's what makes financial sense. Have a plan, make cost benefit part of it, make avoiding excessive dwell time part of it, and you'll take a lot of the pain out of the situation as it's happening. Now, that doesn't save you from the pain later on of the liability investigation and the cargo claim. Because the unfortunate part is that the motor carrier has a no negligence liability standard imposed on them, right? And I tell every single day I've shown up for work for my entire career, a motor carrier has said something to me, some version of the following sentence: but I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything wrong, right? And I have the unfortunate task of telling them, I know that. I know you didn't do anything wrong, but you don't have to do anything wrong to occasion liability, right? To the question quickly, I would request a joint inspection immediately, and I would do it in writing, and I would send it out to all parties. Because if you can get your insurance company to dispatch a surveyor, 9 times out of 10, the shipper and the broker are going to deny being part of the joint inspection. That's fine. That might even bode better for you, because if they deny being part of the joint inspection, then your inspection report conducted by your insurance company is going to be the only evidence there is. And if it bodes in your favor, i.e. saying that there was nothing wrong with the berries, they were pulped and the temperature was fine, then what I would do is I would immediately put the freight on hand. And I would tell everyone, look, I get it. We disagree here, but and we can disagree, but what you can't do is force me to warehouse this cargo for free. Here are the storage charges. They start tomorrow. And in a month, I'm going to sell this freight at auction and apply the proceeds of that sale to my storage bill. And if there's any left over, I'll give you that money. And by the way, because you're abandoning these berries, that I have an inspection report that says it's fine, because you've abandoned the cargo with me, I'm not going to honor a cargo claim for something that you abandoned that's clearly fine. So that's...
the other thing is too, I love you, in the comments, Chris, people were already saying, well, what about storage fees? And you hit it right on the head. The on-hands notice, which anybody who needs a copy, just Google on-hands notice. You can have a copy of that. But Ingrid, the other thing that I'm telling my friends and my drivers and my carriers is, if you're not allowed on that dock and you're not allowed to touch the bill of lading, all that jazz, send emails as much as you can. Like, even on your phone, just email the broker and be like, hey, FYI, I'm not allowed on the dock. That way it's in your documentation. So if there's a cargo claim, you have an email saying I wasn't even allowed on the dock, because that helps Chris do his job. And so that's my biggest thing, is like, call. I don't like calls because you don't have documentation, but I like emails as much as possible. So Ingrid,
Right.
I have a question for you, because
Sure.
this one's actually perfect for you, because I think I know you well enough now. I think I know what your answer is.
Okay.
And this one is for you too, Chris. It's from Daryl. And then I'll get to Andrew. I'm sorry, Andrew, I see you. I have a question, he says, regarding a load that the shipper did not tell us was over height or put on the work order, but was over height, and then the driver hit a low bridge. Shipper's argument is they requested a quote at the same time, at the same location 4 months ago, and mentioned over height there, but for this shipment they didn't mention over height. Ingrid, what is your answer to this question?
Somebody, let me say, not somebody, the driver didn't do his job. Because first off, you know, if it's not on there, or if it is on there, you better measure that load. Because 9 times out of 10, it's going to come up different than what's on a rate con or on the instructions on there. So if he hit the bridge It's on him because he should have put a stick to it. He should have known straight out what it was. And once he found out, though, he should have never moved until he notified the shipper, notified the broker, and this was all resolved before he ever left off to hit a bridge.
Come on, guys. You know this, and a driver is telling you this. Although she's extremely more experienced than many of the other drivers out there, you still know this. When that cargo is loaded on your dock, on your truck, you're fucking responsible. You have to make sure you know the weight. You have to make sure you know the height and the dimensions. You guys, I had a trucker a long time ago. Unfortunately, he rolled his truck because his shipper lied to him about the dimensions of the goods. And he rolled his truck going around a corner. Guess whose fault that is? At the end of the day, it's the truckers. And you guys, that's the law. That freaking sucks. It sucks.
That's part of the job. That's part of the job. Know your weight, know your dimensions, know what your capacity is. And that's what you got to know. And honestly, it's not for you, and it's not for shippers or brokers or receivers. It's not for me. It's literally for general motoring public and anybody around me in case something happens.
So right.
And I'm stupid enough to take the load and thinking that, oh, Ingrid's been out here this long, I got this. No, it doesn't work that way. I could screw up just as easy tomorrow. But I got to use my head.
I see
guys,
this
that's
problem.
the biggest thing. Also, another reason why we need to pay our drivers more, by the way. I think that's because the job is so hard. It's so hard to be a driver. And we've talked about this a lot in this show, that we don't pay drivers enough. And then when we get angry about the bottom feeder problem, whose fault do you think that is? You know what I mean? That's not here or there, Ingrid. I'm sorry. I don't mean to drag you.
No, you're fine. There's just so much on our plate. And I don't think some people realize that making sure dimensions, you know, they think, well, if it comes across a piece of paper, then that's said, and we don't even look at it, consider it, it's okay. But no, that's part of our physical job, and that's time consuming, as well as we got to worry about everybody else. I mean, if we don't keep safety, it's kind of hard to do in an office.
Yeah. Andrew, Chris, did you have anything to add to that? Because that was me knowing Ingrid long enough to know exactly what she was going to answer that with.
Yeah, just real quick, I see a different version of the same exact problem all the time, where carriers will say, well, look, I don't know anything about the cargo. How could I be responsible for securing it? And for me, it's like, oh, come again? Shall we have a discussion with the DOT and the FMCSA about how you don't believe that securing cargo is, your responsibility? Because the way I see it, I have family, friends, loved ones. They are all out on the road from time to time. And by federal regulation, you must inspect and ensure that the cargo is properly secured. So oftentimes, hitting a bridge with an overheight shipment is extreme. A lot of the time, it's just cargo falls over in transit. But what's really scary is when a 5,000-pound roll of paper falls over in transit and falls through the trailer into traffic. That's scary. And when you have motor carriers out there asserting, look, securement's not my job. Oh, come again, it's not.
And I would like to remind all my shippers out there, because as more and more the show grows, the more and more shippers I seem to collect. I want to remind you guys, you're not off the hook. If paper, those big paper barrels, they're actually the ones that, if misloaded, they do roll the truck the most. They're the most dangerous. I want you to know that you are liable if the truck rolls because of the way you loaded it. And I know that everybody goes right to the driver. And we just talked about how it's the driver's fault as well. But don't you think for a second that a third party, a plaintiff attorney, which if you haven't noticed on YouTube, we do have videos. We do have an interview with a really top, great plaintiff attorney. You don't think he's going to sue the shipper for the way the shipper loaded the goods? You got another thing coming for you. So I'm going to pop Ingrid. Ingrid, we love you to pieces.
Love you guys. Have a great weekend.
We're lucky to have you. So thank you so much. And I hope all your appointments went well. And I'll message you later too.
Yes. Talk to you later. Good night. Bye.
Andrew, we've been waiting patiently. I love your question. You allowed me to nerd it out when probably only 10% of the people listening could even understand what the hell I was talking about.
Yeah,
are you a broker or a carrier or a shipper?
Broker.
Are you moving partials?
Yeah, I have in my experience, and that's one thing I can't, I don't know, I can't remember a specific claim that I actually had on that, but that's one thing that's always been discussed is how is the insurance value calculated? So we've gone off linear feet, we've, used, like you're talking about the weight, and then, one of the theories that we've gone with is, well, the carrier has $100,000. Is that $100,000 for what's in the truck, or is that $100,000 per each shipment?
Nope.
So it's we've kind of interpreted whichever way benefits us the most.
And partials is like a cowboy area of the business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was back when I was at Echo too. I remember one guy started up a partial department, and we were all like, "What the fuck is partials?" And now, it's a good way to get yourself a full truckload. Often, also, it's a downfall if the shipper finds out that their goods have been partialed. But that was the only way I could think of was that per pound valuation. And what it did was give awareness so that it forced the sales to go back to the customer and ask them what the value of your pallets are.
Yeah.
And then we divided it out per pound. So that was the only way I could think of. And I even asked the insurance companies, and I went everywhere. But just know, that truck only has $100,000. That's it. Don't forget about the deduction. The
deductible.
Thank you. Which you'll hold the carrier's payables for that deduction.
Yeah.
But don't forget about that deductible, because that's a big one. What else has been going on? How was this week? Was it good?
Yeah. I mean, it was about as good as it could be. So what I'm doing right now is I'm mainly focused on breaking out a cradle to grave model to a customer and carrier specific model.
What does that mean?
So what's that?
What does that mean? I'm just a dumb lawyer.
So instead of pretty much everybody being a jack of all trades, where you're selling to the customer, you're selling to the carrier, doing all your tracking, we're going to have one team that simply works with the customers, develops the customers, does the rating, customer communication, and then another team that's responsible for sourcing capacity, making the relationships, and reutilizing carriers as best as they can. So everybody's got a specialty. It's almost like when you go to Subway, you got one person that's cutting the bread, putting the meat on there, putting the cheese, one person popping in the oven,
makes sense.
One person putting all your favorite fixings on, and then somebody finally rings you up, and hopefully it's not one of the people that touched your sandwich, which is now touching your money.
So it's so funny because I always thought cradle to grave. Maybe I misheard you. I always thought cradle to grave meant like you would handle the shipment the entire way. Versus how you explain the Subway assembly line.
No, Subway assembly, that's what we're getting to.
Okay.
Cradle to grave, is you're doing everything.
Okay.
And so
which I'm a control freak.
Yeah.
So I like that.
And that's, it depends on your company, depends how big you are. But there's certain things that you lose when you do cradle to grave, and you lose control. And some people, they got to have control. A company I was at years ago, we had a salesperson that needed control. She took all the orders directly, put them in the system, did all that, and you would see her margins go from about she'd get up to about $21,000 a month, and then fall back to like 14 or 15, and then she'd work really hard to get it back up to 21, and then fall back again to 14, 15, and have to redo it. And so you look at it to say, you may not be able to do everything as well as I can. But there's look at it, there's economies of scale there. It may not be the exact way that I want it done.
Right.
But if you want to grow, you got to be able to accept that something may not go right. Somebody may make a mistake. People are human, unfortunately.
So I have that problem as a lawyer, right? Because I'm charged per hour for my lawyer or for my consulting fees. So cradle to grave would be very bad for me because I make a lot of money at a certain time, but if I control everything, it doesn't make a lot of money for me. So I think at some point we should have a show about what are all the different brokerage models. Chris Jolly is always helping me understand this, and Josh Kale and some of the other folks I know, but I think that would be cool to have a show about that. Okay, so Andrew, you're fucking awesome. Thank you for posing that question. Keep us in the loop. Come back next Friday because we'll have another open mic session.
Perfect.
And have fun with whatever you're doing. Chris, I think we are good to go. I think I see all the questions coming in with cargo claims, but I think we should stop and you and I should have a part 2 of cargo claims because you give like the nice professional answer. I feel like I'm like the Better Call Saul option.
I will good cop, Saul cop, cargo claims with you anytime. Happy to come back.
But I see we do have a ton of questions we did not answer, you guys. So let us know if you want us to have a part 2. Please keep in mind that next Thursday, I'm going to do a paid course. It's very, very intense. I will teach you about cargo claims. I will give you cheat sheets, everything you need to know, even if you're brand new to cargo claims. That's next Thursday. I'll put the link in the comments. Make sure to reach out to Chris. Make sure he is your friend because he is a very valuable person to know because the cargo claims people that really know cargo claims, I don't know, there's very few in the entire country. Truly no cargo claims, very few. So thank you for joining us. Chris, you're amazing. Thank you so, so much. I owe